All right, welcome back to another video. This is a special one coming to you with bleary eyes and hoarse throat from none other than Miami, Florida. Of course, the location of this year's Bitcoin conference. My name is Ian Major. I'm an entrepreneur, Bitcoin pleb, and all-around raging capitalist. Yes, we've still got the raging capitalist, even with the throat. But I am extremely excited to be coming to you. This is now after the conference. Today we're going to be going through our June monthly Bitcoin digest. For those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. I do these digests monthly where I cover a variety of topics around the Bitcoin universe. Typically focus less on, sorts of near-term price predictions and much more on kind of the fundamentals that are underpinning and driving the space. And this month's edition is no different. So for those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. I hope you like this content. If you do, consider subscribing. That really does help get these messages out to more folks on their journey to becoming financially sovereign, which is what this channel is all about. For those returning to the channel, welcome back. As always, my friends, it is great to have you here. And so in today's video, I'm going to kind of reflect on the conference a bit. It was just an unbelievable amount of energy here in Miami. And so we'll kind of go through that first. We'll go through the big El Salvador announcement that was made, kind of losing track of my days here, but it was made on Saturday. And we'll cover a couple other topics around Taproot and some of the other bigger pieces heading on in the space. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump in. Miami. All right, so let's talk a bit about the conference itself. I was totally blown away, and that was even with a lot of kind of build up and enthusiasm about you have no idea what's in store. This is going to be one of the biggest events, not just of the year, but in many, many years. And I think that was true in many ways. It was, kind of very impressively put on. I mean, you had, skate ramps, you had sumo wrestling matches, you had gaming lounge, you had, a number of stages where, of course, speakers are presenting on different topics. And so I was there both as a pleb, enjoying everything, but also I was there with my business partner, doing a kind of first glimpse at the world of a new project we're working on called BYOD, Bitcoin for your data, or bring your own data. And the whole concept is in the age of 2021. Obviously, it's no secret when you go to Facebook, all these big platforms, you are the product, right? None of those platforms are really free. And so what's wild is how all of those platforms now have to enable you, the user, to download all your data. So you can go on Facebook right now and in a couple clicks, download everything that they've ever had on you. What BYOD allows you to do is then turn around and sell that, monetize it for your own benefit, and earn Bitcoin. So yet another way to stack sats, very much kind of inspired from the idea of the fold card where you swipe on everyday purchases and get sats back. So if that is interesting in any way, shape, or form, check out the link I've provided in the description down below, byod.exchange, where you can sign up for our early access list. We're hoping to do a kind of soft beta launch later this year. But enough about that. We, the thing that really kind of stood out the most to me was just the overall level of energy. Keep in mind, this is, shortly after a massive kind of price correction, at least in the, fiat exchange terms. But you nonetheless had just an absolutely dizzying amount of enthusiasm and kind of passion. I think the other thing that really, really stood out to me about the conference is if you go on Bitcoin Twitter, you'll see a lot of folks kind of criticizing the fact that, you had Floyd Mayweather up on stage with like an Ethereum shirt and talking about how another coin will come and eclipse Bitcoin one day. And of course, those criticisms are rightly placed, especially after the miserable fight that he and Logan Paul had. But that's for another story. But despite that kind of rightful criticism, keep in mind that there are these other sessions like toxic maximalism is a feature, not a bug. When you talk about kind of toxic Bitcoin maximalists and why they have to be so mean and they hurt my feelings and all this stuff. But I think there were a number of sessions, including Jack Maller's speech at the end with the El Salvador announcement that we'll get to, that really kind of shook people. You had a massive, dizzying array from folks who literally know nothing about the space other than, hey, this is like an exciting new thing. New, right? You have folks who are, who have a portfolio of every coin that you could possibly imagine. And so for them, Bitcoin is just one of many. And then you have, of course, folks who are much more along the spectrum towards kind of Bitcoin maximalism, believing that Bitcoin has sort of already won the race to be the most, tamper-proof, hardest monetary network for settlement and value transfer that will ever exist. Regardless of where you currently stand on that spectrum, I think the Bitcoin conference in many ways was eye-opening for folks who are, more diverse in their portfolio, perhaps, or perhaps for folks who, haven't bought any crypto assets. And so I think that's really, really powerful, and I think it's the right message to be had because 99.9% of all altcoins are scams or just sort of efforts to enrich their founding team. Bitcoin is truly the only crypto asset that has grown up in the wild, right? It's bootstrapped its existence since 2009 with no face, right? No founding team. There's no corporate or otherwise, organizational entity that's wrapped around it. And so, you think of what Ethereum's doing in this huge migration to proof of stake, whether regardless of the many arguments against proof of stake, like that type of change is just, concerning, right? Bitcoin is immutable. Bitcoin is stable. And with all the kind of development happening on layers 2 and 3, we talked with some of the folks over at Stacks who are building broader smart contract functionality that sits on top of Bitcoin. We talked about the Lightning Network. If you've been watching my videos recently, I've started to do a whole series on the Lightning Network, which certainly still has some growing pains and liquidity challenges to make the network really work. But man, it is totally wild how fast that's moving, and folks who kind of discount Lightning and say Bitcoin will never be an everyday kind of payment method have completely lost the plot at this point. So I know I'm rambling a bit here, but my overall takeaway on the Bitcoin conference was just immense and sort of immeasurable enthusiasm and passion, not just sort of the big name influencers that you see on Bitcoin Twitter with all their followers, but like also builders, people building real solutions that take advantage of the Bitcoin stack and that are building on Bitcoin only. It is super, super exciting to see. And so that I think is really what struck me. And yeah, so let's now talk about the El Salvador news specifically. Miami. All right, so the big news, if you haven't seen it yet, this is huge. So Jack Mallers, who leads Strike, company that's doing a lot around the Lightning Network and enabling someone to send, US dollars, change that into Bitcoin, zip it across the Lightning Network over to a colleague in Frankfurt, Germany, and immediately transfer that and exchange it to euros, right? So it's taking this next step. There's Bitcoin, the monetary asset, but then there's also Bitcoin, the network. And so all these kind of other use cases that get built on top of Bitcoin, the monetary protocol, can leverage its powerful network that is sort of backed by all the security and traits that that we know about Bitcoin. And so Jack Mallers came out on stage at the very end of Saturday's festivities at the conference, and starts introducing a lot of folks kind of anticipated that it had something to do with El Salvador, where he had lived for a couple months, just to see folks there. 70% of folks in El Salvador currently don't have a bank account. Remittances is something like 22 to 24% of El Salvador's GDP. So Salvadorians living in the U.S. Sending their sending money back to El Salvador they're talking about fees upwards of 50% of that amount that come out of that, and so there's this humongous reliance on remittances, and yet the entire kind of system is horrible. Think about someone in El Salvador who has to go over to the money center in order to get the remittance. There's of course would-be criminals that are kind of around that location, knowing that people are coming and getting money. So the whole system is really, really sad. And so Jack talks about his experience there, and how he ultimately got to know President Nayib Bukele, as well as other kind of government officials, and ultimately helped partner and co-author a bill that the president of El Salvador is submitting to the Congress that would make Bitcoin legal tender. This is nearly impossible to overstate the importance of. I've been totally disgusted at the responses that we've seen from the mainstream media, BBC in particular, coming out and saying, Roger Ver as well. I mean, just absolute jokesters coming out and sort of undermining the importance of this, saying, oh, well, my, shitcoin would do this better, blah, 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 right? I mean, you can sort of tell the desperation that folks are getting, realizing that we really are on this trajectory of hyper-Bitcoinization. And so, again, the bill itself is to make Bitcoin legal tender. We shouldn't forget, by the way, that Japan has sort of already done this a couple years ago. So in terms of firsts, we should keep this in context. But I think, today is a very, very different time than a few years ago, given what's unfolded over the last year. And so El Salvador really does represent what I believe to be a domino effect, right? Other countries now have to at least answer the question or articulate a strategy around Bitcoin adoption or not. Because if you're the last one to adopt, you are going to be, the last one in and impoverished as a result relative to what you could have been had you been an early adopter. So there's this vicious sort of game theory that goes on at, not just the sort of corporate and company level, which has been spurred by a lot of what MicroStrategy's been doing, but now at the nation state level as well. So, I mean, this is just insane. It's not just insane from a kind of Bitcoin adoption story, right? And people coming out saying, oh, well, El Salvador is a small country that doesn't mean anything, right? Number one, that's a horrible thing to say. We're talking about, tens of thousands, millions of people who could potentially benefit in a massive way from this technology. But secondly, it really doesn't matter about the size. What matters is that it's happening. A lot of people believe this is essentially a shoo-in in terms of it getting passed in Congress. So we shall see in hopefully a couple days from now. But I just wanted to kind of emphasize that this is massive. This is humongous. And I would encourage and urge all of you to go and watch Jack's entire speech on the subject. I'll try and find a link and put it in the description. I think you can type Bitcoin 2021 and find the official Bitcoin conference sort of YouTube where they're posting all the different videos. But you have to go check that out. It honestly brought me to tears. I mean, this is that powerful. And though for that to sort of cap the whole kind of conference off was just an absolutely beautiful thing. Lightning's real. It's got challenges. It's still growing. It's still in its infancy, but it's real. It's solving real world problems for tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, and it's only the beginning. So super exciting stuff. Go check the whole speech out from Jack. And now let's transition a bit and talk about one of our favorite topics of Taproot. Miami. All right, so in one of our last videos, we covered Taproot, talked about sort of what it is. So I'm not going to cover that again in today's video. If you're curious, go back to one of my last digests. I'll put a link in the description down below. But Taproot is the most major upgrade coming to the Bitcoin protocol in a number of years, really around improving privacy for different types of transactions on the blockchain. And so this is all very, very good for users of Bitcoin. And so there's this process of signaling where miners of Bitcoin will signal their support for the upgrades or not. And so we're within that signaling period now. If above 90% of the blocks being mined in a 2-week difficulty adjustment period, if over 90% of those have the positive signal for Taproot, then Taproot will be rolled out and fully activated in November of this year. And where we are right now is above that 90% threshold. It is expected that in this current 2-week adjustment period, which will end in a couple days, we should see this and lock it in. And so that's very good news. It's a great upgrade to the technology, and it kind of removes this question mark that has been lingering. But perhaps my favorite part about all of this is this was maybe a week or so ago. You had Marathon, which is the largest North American kind of mining pool, that still hadn't positively signaled for their support of Taproot. And you could imagine why, right? If Taproot brings more privacy, and we've seen all these kind of narratives unfold around mining and ESG and surveillance and all this stuff, no surprise that Marathon, if anything, would only begrudgingly accept this set of upgrades. But basically, they were like the lone major mining pool that still hadn't signaled. And so the plebs on Bitcoin Twitter just absolutely went at them. Flurry of different tweets, and it was just pretty funny stuff. I'll try and kind of sprinkle a couple of those here in the video. But suffice it to say, days later, they basically capitulated. Their CEO, Fred, came on and kind of said, hey, don't worry, we're with it, we're here, we acknowledge the benefits of all this. And so you have, Marathon kind of doing a 180 and supporting Taproot, which you just love to see it. So Taproot's on its way. That removes kind of an unknown in terms of Bitcoin technology for this year. So that's all very good news. Miami. In terms of other happenings, you also had the Bitcoin car number 21, of course, racing at the Indy 500, which was very, very cool to see. This was a project also spearheaded by Jack Mallers and the Strike team. This was, I believe, the first example of a community-funded car being raced in the Indy 500. Very, very cool. Renus VK, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, was the driver, and actually was in pole position, first place for a number of laps out of the gate. So that was just incredible to see, incredible to hear. Commentators saying, "Oh, the Bitcoin car, is in first place." I think he ended up in 8th or something like that. But really, really cool stuff. Good visibility, and again, just yet another kind of badge of the power of the community and how passionate the community is behind all things Bitcoin. So with all of that, let's go ahead and close this video out. I didn't want to go too long here. I know the audio for this is probably less than ideal, and the lighting is a bit finicky here as well. But just to recap, we talked about the Bitcoin conference and just the energy and I think the perspective that was shared for many folks who are either perhaps pre-coin or maybe who have just all the different diversified basket of cryptos and don't really realize what's special and unique about Bitcoin. I think this conference hopefully illuminated that for many folks, which is a super, super important thing, to not get kind of sidetracked and distracted by everything that's happening in the broader crypto space, and rather focus on what's ultimately going to win, which is Bitcoin. We talked about the El Salvador announcement and how you cannot possibly overstate the importance of this, despite what the mainstream media would have you believe otherwise. No surprise there. And then we talked about how Taproot is progressing, how the plebs had yet another victory over Marathon, and how, with things like the Indy 500, visibility and awareness is increasing. But with that visibility and awareness, I think education is the other complement that is super critical, right? To put things into perspective. And again, that's what I try and do my best with this channel. So I hope you all enjoyed this content and update from beautiful Miami. If you did, you already know what to do. Give this video a like, comment down below what were your thoughts if you tuned in or if you were in Miami itself. What did you think? Let me know in the comments down below. All of that really helps this get out to more folks and hopefully help them on their quest to financial sovereignty. But until then, this is Ian signing off from Miami. As always, every cent counts. And until next time, I'll see you then.